Hello, weary travelers, night owls, and midnight marauders. This is Only Coyote, and I will be your host this evening on Amityville Horror Radio. Tonight's tales are about that special holiday, Halloween. Our first story, The Girl Who Died in the Well, by Alex Wright Stories. Narrated by MrFreakyStory. Enjoy.
So it was Halloween 2016, and I was having a sleepover at my friend's house, Mark. We went trick-or-treating, even though we were 13 at the time. We just did not care. We went to 3 neighborhoods and got 2 pillow bags full of sweets. When we went back to his home around 10:20 p.m., his mum had hot chocolate ready for us to drink, and some horror movies like Scream, Paranormal Activity, etc. This was followed up by a comedy like Grown Ups, so we can actually sleep afterwards. It was a great night. We watched all of the movies. Then around 2:30 a.m., I went into the bathroom. Mark told me when I came back that he heard scratching on the living room window. I told Mark that he was just paranoid, that's all. But then I heard the scratching too. That scared me, because the scratching sounded like a long fingernail going up and down the window, which made it more unpleasant for my ears. Then a big bang on the window, and both Mark and I jumped. We ran down his hallway to his bedroom, shut the door and locked it. He put on YouTube and played Garfield episodes to make us not think about what just happened, and it actually worked until we heard a scream outside his window. He was tearing up, and I went to see what it was at the window. I regret it so much. It was a young but horrifying lady. She had black eyes, pale white skin, a mouth as long as the Scream mask. I pulled the curtains back and laid on the floor in horror. Mark asked me what I saw, and I told him. He said that his grandparents used to have a smaller house a couple of meters away from where Mark's dad's house is, and they had a well where their daughter fell into and died. Every Halloween she'd come and play with whoever owned the land, which was only owned by the O'Connors, Mark's family. Before he finished, there was such a loud bang on the front door that I thought the door would break down. It kept on banging for a good 20 seconds, and then it stopped. When it came around 4 a.m., Mark and I heard a last scream. It was a scream you'd hear when someone is drowning and screaming for their life. It was the most ear-drenching sound in the world. As soon as it hit 4:01 a.m., it stopped and everything felt like it was normal. Mark couldn't stop puking in the toilet because whenever he gets scared to death, he pukes. His parents came in and asked what we're doing up so late. I told them that the girl kept us up. They stayed quiet for a moment and then made us a cup of tea.
Our next story, a Halloween special, written and narrated by Tales by the Campfire.
Allison's favorite holiday was Halloween. Even at the age of 21, she never grew out of the Halloween spirit. She still dressed up in scary costumes, went to pumpkin patches with her friends, and even enjoyed the horror movie marathons that played all October long. But this Halloween was a little different. Because of her demanding career in pharmaceuticals, Allison was now living in a small town in Pennsylvania that was over 2 hours away from her family and friends. That meant she spent celebrating most holidays and birthdays alone. However, being the optimist that she proudly was, she decided that this Halloween, she was going to thoroughly enjoy herself, despite being alone from her friends and family. These were her very thoughts that Halloween evening, as she made her way up the path to her front door. Kids in costumes were shouting for joy houses down as the neighbors handed out candy. Hurrying her pace, not wanting to miss the joy of giving candy out to the trick-or-treaters, Allison unlocked her front door and opened it. Before she stepped in, there, shoved under her welcome mat, was a white envelope. Curiously, Allison bent over and picked it up. There was no return address and only 2 words written on the front: for Allison. Wondering who would have left this here, she tore open the envelope, pulled out a letter, and began reading it. Dear Allison, how are you? I hope all is well and that you're enjoying your new home. I'll keep this brief because there isn't much time. Tonight, Halloween night, be sure by 10 p.m. to lock all your doors and windows. And whatever you do, do not answer your door after 10 p.m. I don't care what you hear or what you think you hear. Do not open your door. Things beyond both our comprehensions will occur, and you must not open the door at any cost. Please, heed my warnings. I only wish for your well-being. Be safe, stay strong, and do not open your door after 10 p.m. With love, your Aunt Cynthia. Allison read and reread the letter. She glanced up and down her street, trying to see if anyone was playing a prank on her. She did not have time to worry about this poor attempt at a cheap scare. Not only did she not have an Aunt Cynthia, but the trick-or-treaters were only 3 houses away, and she had to prepare the candy bowl. It was her first Halloween in this neighborhood, and she was not going to be the neighbor who neglected the children their sugar rush. She made her way inside, her mind quickly occupied with the Halloween joy, trick-or-treaters, and a night of handing out candy. Any thoughts of ominous warnings and cheap scares were long gone. By 9:15 p.m., Allison's candy bowl was nearly empty. Despite being alone, she was having a great Halloween night. She bounced back and forth from answering the trick-or-treaters and watching the horror movie marathon on TV while enjoying a glass of red wine. By 9:45, she decided to call it quits. There hadn't been trick-or-treaters for nearly an hour. This was a young neighborhood after all. Most of the kids were all sugared out and in bed. Plus, John Carpenter's Halloween was the next movie on TV, and she did not want to miss 1 second of that. She quickly got up and went to turn off her front porch lights, signaling to any other trick-or-treaters out there that she was closed for business. As she made her way to the front door, she noticed that it was 10 p.m. The letter's ominous warning came flooding back to her memory, but in her wine-induced state of being, she simply laughed at the poor attempt of a scare. As her hand went to the switch that would turn off her front porch lights, there was suddenly a knock at the door. "Trick or treat," Allison heard from the other side of the door. She reached for the doorknob and almost opened it. Almost. There was something odd about the voice. Something off. Allison cleared her throat. "Sorry, all out of candy." She expected whoever was at the door to go away. What she did not expect was to see her doorknob begin to turn. She quickly turned the lock and slid the deadbolt across. "I said, I'm all out of candy. I'm sorry. Try another house." Silence hung there like a dense fog. "Allison, open the door." The wine buzz she was enjoying all night dissipated. She took a step back and pulled out her phone. "If you don't leave, I'm calling the police." There was another long drawn-out pause. "Allison, we both know they can't help you." Her front door shook violently. The frame siding even began to splinter. Wood chips spilled to the ground. In a haste, she dialed 911. When she painstakingly explained her situation, that's when the violent attempt to break in ceased. There was an eerie calm. Allison sprinted into the kitchen and grabbed a steak knife. She opened her front door an inch to see if the maniac was still there. And that's when she saw the red and blue flashing lights. Cop cars and ambulances were scattered on the street and lawn of her next-door neighbor's house. She opened her door wider to analyze the situation. A cop came sprinting over to her. "Ma'am, please lock all your doors and windows and stay inside for the night." Allison obeyed, but not before noticing that the officer's uniform was covered in dark red. She relocked her door and sat on her living room couch, waiting for sleep to come. It never did. The next morning, the local news had the answers to Allison's questions. The newscaster was calling it the Halloween Massacre. Allison's next-door neighbors, the Doyles, were mutilated beyond recognition. They were a family of 6, a mom and dad, and 4 kids, all gone from this earth. What was worse, the newscaster explained, was that there was no fingerprints, no DNA, or any other forms of evidence left behind. Just a family massacred with no explanation of how. Allison watched the news unfold throughout the morning, tears in her eyes. She scrambled through her kitchen trash until she found it, the letter left on her mat. She dialed her mother, burning with questions. "Do I have an Aunt Cynthia?" There was a pause. "Allison, is everything all right? Where's this coming from? Answer the question. Do I have an Aunt Cynthia?" Allison heard her mother gulp. "Technically, yes." "Who is she? Why have I never met her?" Her mother sighed. "Sweetie, Cynthia was my younger sister. When she was born, her neck caught around the umbilical cord. She suffocated." Allison froze to the spot, her aunt's letter in hand. That's when she noticed that there was more writing on the back that she hadn't noticed before. She turned the letter over and read, "Sweetie, there has always been good and evil on the earth. It is up to us to protect our loved ones from the evil. We've never met, not in this life, but I am the guardian of your life. That's what family does. Stay blessed, Allison, and stay safe." Allison folded the letter to her chest. Her Aunt Cynthia was her guardian angel.
Up next, A Halloween Monster. Written by Red Nova Tyrant. Narrated by Danie Dreadful.
Come on, Jackie. Only kids like you have to be brave, 'cause they have no big brothers or big sisters to protect them. Daddy's words repeated in my head, and I swallowed before trying again. My feet shook as they made their way up the creaky wooden steps. A layer of fog rolled and twirled around my legs, illuminated by orange lights that shone from fires held within devils' faces. One step howled loudly, catching me off guard and forcing me to hurry back down to the safety of the stone path below. Though it wasn't too much better down here. There were wispy skeletons moving about, and when one reached for me, I hurried back onto the steps. This time my climb was greeted by a door opening. There was no bright, welcoming light that rushed to escape into the night. Rather, only tiny little bulbs of purple and green and orange shone within the darkness, and nothing more. Only when the shadow hurried forth did I scream and stumble back yet again. My suspense was broken by the approaching figure. "Well, hello there," the creature spoke. My lip quivered and I was unable to respond. Its pale white face shook me deeply, standing out entirely on its own from the large black cloak it wore. "What did you say?" was all I could muster before running from the house. A pair of arms interrupted my escape, quickly grabbing my fairy princess dress and hoisting me upwards. "Oh, there, Jacqueline," Uncle Hugh whispered, rubbing my back slowly as I cried out. Tears ran down my frightened face for the millionth time tonight, ruining any remaining makeup Mommy had put on. Uncle Hugh then did something that made me freeze up in terror. He called out to the monster. "Do you think you could come here? She's a little frightened." My heart started to race rapidly as I heard footsteps clicking along the pathway behind me. I thrust my eyes into my uncle's shoulders, trying to hide from the beast. When he told me to, I looked. I turned around to meet it once more. My cries echoed through the neighborhood once again as the monster laughed, pearly white fangs matching perfectly with its face. "Oh, I'm sorry, dearie. Here, have some extra for being such a brave girl." The monster then stretched out the opening of my bag and dumped in 2 big chocolate bars and bags of chips. "What do you say, Jackie?" Uncle Hugh asked. "Thank you," I mumbled before hiding my face again. I knew the candy was free, but having to approach these terrifying monsters to get it was just too much. At least there were only a few houses left. Uncle Hugh set me down beside the car and opened the door to get in. Daddy was still sleeping in the back seat. I couldn't wait to show him all the candy I'd gotten when he woke up. Uncle Hugh told me not to disturb him right now, though, or else he might get angry. After I was buckled in, the car started to move. I began thinking about what Daddy had told me about being brave. It seemed odd now, considering how Uncle Hugh was here taking me out trick-or-treating. After all, I always thought Daddy taught me that phrase because he was an only child, too.
Our final story, Ghosts on the Staircase. Written and narrated by yours truly. My closest brother and I grew up in different homes. It's a long story. Anyways, on Halloween when I was 13 and my brother was 12, I was over at his house just hanging out. We were too cool for trick-or-treating at this age. Plus, his mom had bought a bunch of candy for us to hand out. And honestly, we were just eating most of it ourselves. So we just played video games and gorged ourselves on soda and candy in the living room. My brother was always going on about how his room was haunted. His room was in the attic. It was a finished-off attic, but it was triangular shaped, so to stand up fully, you had to be in the center line of the room. To get to his room, you had to walk up a narrow stairwell, with walls on both sides instead of banisters, and it only led to his door and nowhere else. So anytime you were in his room, you could hear someone walking up the creaking wooden stairs quite easily. He would tell me and all our boys that randomly in the middle of the night, and sometimes when he was home alone, he would hear footsteps coming up the stairs, and when he would open the door, there wouldn't be anyone there. Eventually, he stopped opening the door and would just stay in his room until morning or until someone came home. None of us ever believed him, because he was always making up haunted bullshit wherever we went. As we were playing games, my controller died. I ran up to his room to get more batteries while he handed out candy to trick-or-treaters at the door. I was digging through his nightstand when I heard what sounded like someone trying to sneak up the stairs, and I realized that my brother was trying to scare me and get me back for all the times I made fun of him for talking about ghosts. So I tiptoed my way over to the door, and I gently grabbed the handle to it. Once I was ready, I turned the handle and I swung the door open as fast as I could, yelling, "Ha!" It took me less than a second to realize nothing was there. Just a long, empty, dark staircase. Fear shot down my spine, and every hair on the back of my neck stood up. I slammed the bedroom door, and I ran for his bed and I jumped under the covers. I just lied there, not moving, hoping for whatever that was to go away. After a couple minutes, I heard footsteps again coming up the stairs. I started to freak out, and I made a small opening under the blankets to peer out at the door. And I watched it open. My brother walked in, pushing the door fully open, and said, "What are you doing?" I sat up, throwing the blanket off my head, and I told him, "Someone came up the stairs, and I thought it was you, but when I opened the door, there wasn't anything there." His eyes widened with fear and excitement that it finally happened to somebody else, and that he wasn't alone with this paranormal occurrence. Right as he took a step forward, we could hear clearly through the open staircase door something running from the bottom of the steps. My brother whirled on his feet, grabbing the door and slamming it shut, and then running full speed towards the bed and diving under the covers with me. We sat there with the blanket over us and our backs against the wall, peering out towards the door, until the adrenaline wore off and we fell asleep. Well, that's it for us at AHR. We hope you enjoyed listening. Please like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more haunting tales.